The autumn sun was flooding the streets of Lagrange as Detective Elise Pierce parked her squad car in front of the red brick apartment building. Several police cars were already parked at the entrance, their presence attracting the attention of passers-by, who slowed their steps, casting curious glances. "Detective Pierce," the young patrolman at the entrance nodded to her. "7th floor, apartment 712. The elevator crept slowly upward, and Elise mentally prepared herself for what awaited her at the top. 20 years on the force, and still every new body was a kick in the butt. She checked the notes in her notebook. Nina Brooks, 28, works as a sommelier, found dead in her own apartment. There was another patrolman on duty at the apartment door. He let Elise through and she stepped through the threshold, instantly assessing the surroundings. The spacious living room with panoramic windows was tastefully furnished, minimalist furniture, a few abstract paintings on the walls, bookshelves with neatly arranged volumes. "Elise, at last." Forensics Officer Giles Montgomery rose from his squatting position beside the sofa. "She's here." On the white leather sofa lay a young woman. Her swarthy skin had taken on a grayish tint, and her eyes were half closed. On the glass coffee table was an empty wine bottle and an orange plastic vial labeled with a pharmaceutical company label. Next to it, a piece of paper. "Preliminary picture?" Elise asked, putting on latex gloves. "At first glance, classic suicide," Giles said, pointing to the table. "Sleeping pills, alcohol, goodbye note. No signs of a struggle. Doors were locked from the inside, windows too." Elise stepped closer, scrutinizing the body. Nina Brooks was a beautiful woman. High cheekbones, full lips, slender figure. She was wearing a wine-colored silk dress. "Time of death? Sometime between 2:22 and 2 a.m. I'll be more precise after the autopsy." Giles pointed to the woman's wrists. "See, there's no injection marks or other injuries. Everything points to ingestion." "Who found the body?" "Housekeeper came in at 9 a.m., called the police right away." Elise took the note from the table, holding it carefully by the edges. "I can't live a lie anymore. Forgive me for everything, especially you, Dominic. You deserved better, Nina." "You don't really believe it was just suicide, do you?" Elise asked, looking at Giles. The medical examiner rubbed his chin and sighed. "There's something strange. Look at her nails." He lifted Nina's hand. "Perfect manicure, not a single scratch or chip. Most people get nervous before they die, might bite their nails or break them. One more thing." Giles leaned over and turned Nina's head slightly. "See that redness behind her ear? It's almost imperceptible, but it's there. Could it be from the jewelry? Maybe. But I didn't find any earrings or chains that would leave a mark like that." Elise began to look around the apartment, methodically going through the rooms. In the bedroom, a wide bed with impeccably made linens. In the dressing room, rows of designer clothes and shoes. The bathroom was sparkling clean. "Had anyone talked to the husband?" Elise asked one of the CSIs. "He's been notified. He was on his way." Elise returned to the living room and examined the contents of Nina's purse. A wallet with credit cards and a small amount of cash, a cosmetic bag, keys, mints. At the bottom of the purse was a business card. The gold-embossed letters read, "Vernon Rayford, owner of the Golden Vine restaurant chain." "Interesting," Elise muttered, tucking the card into the evidence bag. As she continued her examination, she noticed an expensive shoebox in the hallway. Inside were a pair of black loafers with red soles and a note, "For the most exquisite woman with the finest taste." The signature was missing. Elise was immersed in her examination when a loud voice sounded behind her. "Where is my wife? I must see her." In the doorway stood a tall man in his 30s wearing a light coat. His face was contorted with a grimace of despair. "Mr. Brooks?" Elise stepped toward him. "I'm Detective Elise Pierce. I'm so sorry." "Nina!" He rushed forward when he saw the body on the couch. 2 police officers barely managed to intercept him. "Mr. Brooks, please," Elise said firmly but gently. "This is a crime scene now. We have to keep it intact." "Crime scene?" Dominic Brooks stopped, looking at her wildly. "Do you think someone—" He fell silent, unable to say the word murdered. "We're investigating every possible theory as we speak," Elise replied. "Come with me, Mr. Brooks." She took him into the kitchen, where she sat him down at the table and poured him a glass of water. Dominic sat with his hands clutching his head, his shoulders shaking. "Mr. Brooks, I know this is difficult for you right now, but I need to ask you a few questions." He raised reddened eyes to her and nodded. "When was the last time you saw your wife?" "Yesterday morning." His voice sounded hoarse. "I was away on a business trip to Atlanta. I was supposed to be back tonight." "Did she seem depressed to you? Maybe she'd been having problems lately?" Dominic shook his head. "No, on the contrary, she was animated, making plans." "Plans?" "Yeah, she said she wanted to change something in her career. Maybe even open her own wine bar." Dominic looked out the window. "We've been saving up for that." "Mr. Brooks, I have to ask, how was your relationship with Nina?" His face tensed. "We loved each other. Yeah, we had our arguments like everyone does, but nothing serious." "And the other men? Was there anyone who took a particular interest in her?" Dominic frowned. "What do you mean?" "Just routine questions," Elise replied softly. "Nina interacted with a lot of people through her work. Were there any who might have crossed the boundaries of a professional relationship?" "No, I don't know." He hesitated. "She worked a lot with different restaurants as a wine consultant. Sometimes she mentioned clients, but..." He paused and looked up at Elise. "Wait a minute. You're talking about suicide. But Nina would never do that." "What makes you so sure?" "Because she's not that kind of person." Dominic raised his voice. "She had plans, dreams. She was never depressed. And that note." He pointed toward the living room. "I can't believe she would write something like that." "Mr. Brooks, you're a prosecutor, right?" Elise asked. "Yes, in the district attorney's office." "Do you handle any particularly difficult cases right now? Maybe someone has threatened you or your family?" Dominic shook his head. "No, nothing like that. Mostly economic crimes, paperwork." Elise wrote something down in her notebook and continued. "Do you know a man named Vernon Rayford?" Dominic's face changed slightly. "Yes, that's the owner of the Golden Vine. Nina used to consult his restaurants on wine lists. Why do you ask?" "Just gathering information about your wife's social circle," Elise replied evenly. "Did she have much contact with him?" "A few times a month, maybe. He's one of her big clients." Dominic rubbed his temples. "But I don't think there was anything personal." Elise noted the slight uncertainty in his voice. "All right, Mr. Brooks. That's enough for today. I'll give you my card. If you remember anything important, call me anytime." Dominic nodded, mechanically tucking the card into his pocket. His gaze was directed into the void. "What's going to happen now, with Nina, I mean?" "The body will be taken away for forensic examination," Elise explained gently. "As soon as the procedures are complete, you can make funeral arrangements." He nodded again, lifelessly, like a marionette. Elise returned to the living room, where Giles was already finishing his work. "We're taking her away," he said. "We'll have the first results tomorrow morning." "I'll be waiting," Elise replied as she watched Nina's body being placed in a black bag and carried out of the apartment. She scrutinized the farewell note once more. Something about it was jarring. Elise pulled a clipboard out of her bag and opened a photograph of a page from the notebook found in Nina's purse. She compared the handwriting. Similar, but not identical. The letters in the note seemed more strained, some of the strokes different. Elise photographed the note and sent it to an expert graphologist she knew with the short text, "Urgent. Personal favor. Compare it to the sample I'll send next." Then she ran another check on the sleeping pills. Prescription medication, prescribed in Nina Brooks's name 2 weeks ago. There were no prints on the bottle except for smudged marks on the cap. Too clean. Before leaving, Elise stopped at the bookcase. A glossy magazine stood out among the wine and cooking books. She opened it and found a bookmark, a spread with an interview with Vernon Rayford. The large headline read, "Empire of Taste, How to Build a Restaurant Chain from the Ground Up." The photo showed Rayford, an imposing man in an expensive suit, standing in front of his flagship restaurant. Elise took a picture of the page and put the magazine away. Already at the door, her phone buzzed with a message from the graphologist. "Definitely not the same person. The note is an imitation of handwriting and not very skillful. I'll send details later." Elise stood for a second, pondering the information, then closed the door behind her. A suicide with a forged note wasn't a suicide. which meant someone really wanted Nina Brooks's death to look that way, and that someone could have been close enough to her to have access to her apartment, to know about the prescription for sleeping pills, and to have roughly reproduced her handwriting. Elise was down in the elevator, mentally compiling a list of people to interview, and first on that list was Vernon Rayford. The morgue greeted Elise with sterile whiteness and the smell of disinfectants. Giles, dressed in a green surgical suit, was leaning over the body of Nina Brooks, making final notes on a clipboard. When he heard footsteps, he looked up and nodded to Elise. "You're just in time. I was just finishing up." Elise stepped closer, looking at the young woman's pale face. Even in death, she retained her beauty despite the bluish tint of her skin. "And what did you discover?" Elise asked, taking her eyes off the body. Giles set the clipboard aside and pointed to Nina's neck. "See these petechiae? Tiny hemorrhages in the sclerae of the eyes and on the mucous membranes of the mouth. Typical signs of asphyxiation." "Asphyxiation?" "Most likely. There's also some bruising on the neck, almost invisible because of the color of the skin, but it's definitely there." Giles pointed to a few dots that, upon closer inspection, did appear a darker shade. "What about the sleeping pills?" "There's a lot of it in the blood, but not in a lethal dose. I think she was already unconscious or severely disoriented when she was strangled." Elise tapped her fingers thoughtfully on the metal table. "So someone gave her wine and sleeping pills and then, when she passed out, finished the job by strangling her." "Exactly. And there's something else." Giles lifted Nina's hand. "I found microscopic particles of tissue under her fingernails. She may have regained consciousness at the last moment and tried to resist." "Did you send the samples to the lab?" "This morning. The results will be back in a couple days." Elise made some notes in her notebook. "So we're officially reclassifying the case as a homicide." "Definitely." Giles nodded. "And from the looks of it, the killer was a cynic. First he drugged her, then strangled her with his bare hands when she couldn't resist. Then he faked a suicide, even forged a note. And it was done by someone she knew. No sign of forced entry," Elise added. "She'd let the killer in." Giles took off his gloves and threw them in the recycling bin. "Do you have any suspects?" "Just a hunch," Elise replied. "But I'm going to talk to one person right now." An hour later, Elise was already entering the Golden Vine restaurant, the flagship of Vernon Rayford's chain. Even on a weekday before lunchtime, the place was lively. Staff in impeccable uniforms scurried between tables, serving customers, mostly businessmen on early business lunches. "Can I help you?" The maitre d' approached her. "I'd like to see Mr. Rayford, Detective Elise Pierce." She showed her badge. The maitre d' frowned slightly. "Mr. Rayford is in his office right now. I'll see if he can see you." Elise had to wait almost 20 minutes before the maitre d' returned and led her through the restaurant to the elevator. They went up to the third floor where the offices were located. Vernon Rayford's office fully corresponded to the image of a successful restaurateur, a spacious room with a panoramic view of the city, designer furniture, a wine cabinet with a collection of rare specimens. Behind a massive dark wood table sat the owner, a man of about 55, with a short graying beard and shrewd eyes. "Detective Pierce." Rayford stood up to shake her hand. "To what do I owe this unexpected visit?" The handshake was firm, confident. Elise noted the expensive cufflinks and the impeccably tailored suit. "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Rayford," she said, sitting down in the offered chair. "I'm investigating the death of Nina Brooks." Rayford's face changed to one of grief. "Yes, I've heard about that tragedy. Terrible. Such a young, talented woman. My condolences to her loved ones. Did you know Mrs. Brooks well?" Of course. She was our wine consultant for the last 2 years. A real expert in her field. She helped us win several prestigious awards for our wine list." "And your relationship was strictly business?" Elise asked bluntly. Rayford squinted slightly. "What else was it supposed to be, Detective?" "We found in Mrs. Brooks's apartment some personal gifts. Expensive shoes, for instance, unsigned." Rayford leaned back in his chair with his arms folded across his chest. "I'm not in the habit of giving shoes to my employees, Detective. It was probably a gift from her husband or another admirer of her talent." "Where were you the night before last?" "Between 10 and 2 a.m. Here at the restaurant." We were having a special dinner for a group of investors. I left around midnight. You can check the security tapes." "I will," Elise nodded. "By the way, when was the last time you saw Mrs. Brooks?" "Let me see." Rayford rubbed his chin. "Last Thursday, I think. She came by to discuss the new supplies for the fall menu." "And did it go well?" "Of course it did." Nina was a consummate professional. Elise noticed that Rayford had switched to first name. "You guys were pretty close, calling her by her first name. Everyone knows everyone in the restaurant business, Detective. It's a tight circle. And yet, did she say anything to you about her future plans? Maybe wanting to start her own business?" Something akin to irritation flashed in Rayford's eyes for a moment, but he quickly controlled himself. "No, nothing like that. Although," he paused, "I remember her mentioning that she wanted to expand her services. Perhaps it was a project of her own. And how did you feel about that?" "With understanding, of course. Every specialist sooner or later wants to create something of his own." Rayford smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "I would even support her endeavor." "That's very generous of you," Elise remarked. "One more question. Do you know Dominic Brooks, Nina's husband?" "Briefly. He picked her up a couple times after work." Rayford glanced at his watch. "I'm sorry, Detective, but I have an appointment in 15 minutes. "Of course I won't keep you." Elise stood up. "Thank you for your cooperation. I may have additional questions." "Always at your service." Rayford walked her to the door. "And, Detective, I sincerely hope you find whoever is responsible for this tragedy, unless, of course, it was a suicide." Leaving the restaurant, Elise dialed her partner's number. "Lucas, check Vernon Rayford's alibi for the night of the murder. He claims he was at his restaurant for an investor meeting before midnight. Also, find out everything you can about his personal life." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Dominic Brooks sat in the bedroom of his apartment, surrounded by his wife's belongings. On the bed were her scarves, notebooks, books, everything he had methodically pulled out of drawers and closets. He examined each item carefully, as if searching for answers to unspoken questions. In the drawer of his bedside table, he found a small, leather-bound notebook. Opening it, Dominic saw Nina's notes on wines, tasting impressions. Flipping through the pages, he stopped suddenly at an entry from a month ago. V suggested a weekend trip, refused, becoming obsessive. Dominic froze. V. Who could that be? The only V name that came to mind was Vernon Rayford. He continued flipping through the notebook and found a few more similar entries. V gave earrings as a gift, had to return them. Doesn't take the hint. Dinner with V. Again hinted at continuation. Time to end this relationship. Talk to V about professional boundaries. Seemed to understand, but I'm not sure. The last entry was dated just a week earlier. V threatened to tell D about us. As if there's anything to tell. We need to stop this. Dominic closed the notebook and squeezed it in his hand. So Nina was hiding something. There was some kind of relationship between her and this V that she was trying to end. And this man had threatened her. He continued his search, and in his file drawer, he found a brochure for the Pine Peaks Mountain Resort, an hour's drive from LaGrange. On the back was written a phone number and the initials VR. Next to it was a receipt for a suite for two, dated last month but made out in Vernon Rayford's name. Dominic sat down on the bed, trying to make sense of the find. His wife clearly knew Rayford more intimately than she was saying. Perhaps there was an affair between them that Nina was trying to end. And what if Rayford hadn't taken no for an answer? He pulled out his cell phone and dialed Detective Pierce's number. "Detective? It's Dominic Brooks. I need to see you. I found something in Nina's things." They agreed to meet in an hour at a small cafe off the center of town. Dominic arrived first and took a table in the far corner. Elise appeared exactly at the appointed time, ordered a coffee, and listened attentively to his story about the findings. "Can I see the notebook?" she asked when Dominic had finished. He handed her a leather book. Elise quickly looked through the marked pages, taking pictures on her phone. "This is serious evidence, Mr. Brooks. It confirms the connection between your wife and Rayford, as well as a possible motive." "You think he killed her?" Elise chose her words carefully. "It's too early to draw conclusions, but these notes definitely give us a new direction for the investigation. I'm going to go to that resort." Dominic said suddenly. Pine Heights. I want to talk to the staff, show Nina's photos. Maybe someone there saw them together. Elise frowned. Mr. Brooks, I understand your desire to get to the bottom of this, but it's best to leave it to the professionals. I'm a professional myself, Detective. Dominic's voice sounded determined. I'm a prosecutor, and I know how to gather evidence. And yet... I'm going down there tomorrow morning, he interrupted. I just wanted to let you know. Elise realized she couldn't talk him out of it. All right, but be careful and keep me informed, and don't go near Rayford if you see him there. Dominic nodded, though his eyes were adamant. After the meeting, Elise returned to the station, where her partner Lucas was waiting with information about Rayford. I checked the security footage, he said. Rayford was indeed at the restaurant until midnight on the day of the murder, but then his car left the parking lot. Where he went afterward is unknown. What about his background? Widower. Wife died 8 years ago of cancer. No kids. In recent years, according to rumors, he met with different women, but nothing serious. Lucas flipped through the records in the tablet. And here's the interesting thing. One of his exes, Teresa Fontaine, filed a complaint against him 3 years ago for stalking, but then withdrew it. Shortly thereafter, she suddenly moved to another state. Sounds like a pattern, Elise said thoughtfully. We could talk to this Teresa. Already working on it. Good. In the meantime, I need a search warrant for Rayford's house. With the one we already have, I think a judge will sign off on it. Lucas nodded and left to do the paperwork, and Elise went back to her desk to go over the pictures of Nina's notebook entries one more time. She was so absorbed that she didn't immediately notice the young woman approaching her desk. Detective Pierce? She asked uncertainly. My name is Ciara Davis. I work as a receptionist at the Golden Vine. What can I do for you, Ms. Davis? I heard you were investigating the death of Nina Brooks. The woman fidgeted with the strap of her purse. I saw Mr. Rayford arguing with her once. It was last week in his office. I was bringing in some papers to sign, and I overheard... What exactly did you hear? Elise stepped forward. She said she didn't want to see him anymore, that she loved her husband and was sorry for what had happened between them. Ciara lowered her voice. And he said he wouldn't let her just walk away, that she belonged to him. Are you sure about what you heard? Absolutely. I left right away so I wouldn't be seen, but I heard everything very clearly. Ciara looked around nervously. I didn't tell anyone. Mr. Rayford, he's a powerful man in our town, but when I heard about Nina's death... You did the right thing coming in, Elise assured her. I'll need your official statement. Over the next hour, Ciara detailed everything she knew about Rayford and Nina's relationship. According to her, their affair had started about 6 months ago, but in the last few weeks, Nina had been trying to end it. He's not the type to take no for an answer, Ciara said lastly. I've seen how he reacts when things don't go according to his plan. It's scary. With the witness gone, Elise was already certain. Rayford had motive and opportunity to kill Nina. Now it was up to the evidence. The next morning, Elise was preparing to search Rayford's house when her phone rang. The display showed an unfamiliar number. Detective Pierce speaking. Detective, this is the manager of the Pine Heights Resort. I was told to contact you. We've had an incident. A man fell off a cliff while hiking. His ID is in the name of Dominic Brooks. Elise felt a chill go down her spine. Is he alive? There was a brief pause. No, ma'am. The injuries are incompatible with life. The body was discovered by hikers about an hour ago. The county police are already on the scene, but since he had your card in his wallet... Elise closed her eyes, trying to collect her thoughts. I'm leaving immediately. Please don't give any details to anyone until I arrive. The Pine Heights Mountain Resort was drenched in autumn beauty. Purple and golden leaves covered the slopes. The air was clear and fresh. But Elise Pierce did not notice this splendor. Her eyes were fixed on the scene of the tragedy, the steep cliff, now fenced off with police tape. The body was discovered at about 8 o'clock this morning, explained the county sheriff, an elderly man with a weathered face. A couple of hikers were coming down the trail and spotted him at the bottom. Apparently, he'd fallen off that lookout. Elise examined the rocky platform protruding over the chasm. The fence was low, only waist-high, made of wooden railings. What did the initial inspection show? She asked. Injuries consistent with a fall from a height. Multiple fractures, internal injuries. The sheriff shrugged. Unfortunately, such cases are not uncommon here. Tourists often let their guard down trying to take spectacular photos. Mr. Brooks wasn't a tourist, Elise countered. He had come here for a specific purpose. Yes, the hotel clerk mentioned that he'd asked the staff about a man and a woman. The sheriff pulled out a notebook. Showed pictures. His wife was murdered 3 days ago, Elise explained. He was doing his own investigation. The sheriff raised his eyebrows. Do you think it's connected? I'm sure it is, Elise said firmly. And I want this place to be treated as a potential crime scene, not an accident. The sheriff looked skeptical, but agreed. All right, detective. My men will do a thorough search of the area. But I have to warn you, it's going to be hard to prove murder here. It's open. The evidence could have been washed away by the morning dew. Elise nodded, realizing the difficulty of the situation. She asked to be taken to where Dominic's things were kept. In a small service room, she was shown the deceased's bag and the clothes in which he had been found. Elise's particular attention was drawn to Dominic's hiking boots. They were new, obviously bought especially for this trip. Examining them, she noticed strange scratches on the right boot and signs of a struggle, as if someone had grabbed Dominic's foot and pulled. I want all the stuff sent to our lab, she said, and I want the security footage. You have a security system, don't you? Of course, the hotel manager confirmed. There are cameras in the parking lot, the lobby and the hallways, but not on the trails, unfortunately. Show me all the footage from the last 24 hours. In the security room, Elise spent hours reviewing the videos. In the parking lot footage, she noticed Dominic arriving in his car at 7 o'clock the previous evening. He checked into the hotel, went up to his room, and then, around 8, came down and began interviewing staff, showing pictures. By 10 p.m. he was back in the room, but half an hour later he came out again, already wearing a jacket and carrying a backpack. Cameras in the lobby captured him heading toward the exit leading to the resort grounds. It's strange to go for a walk this late, Elise remarked. Some guests like the night views, the security chief shrugged. The stars are especially bright here. Elise continued watching. At 11:20, a black SUV with tinted windows appeared in the parking lot. A tall man in dark clothing stepped out of it and headed toward the trails. The camera only captured him from the back, but Elise was almost certain it was Vernon Rayford. We need to check the license plate on that car, she said. And I want a list of all the guests registered yesterday. The check confirmed her suspicions. The license plate belonged to Vernon Rayford's car. Although his name wasn't on the guest list, the front desk clerk recognized him from his photograph. Yeah, this gentleman's a frequent visitor. Usually rents a suite for the weekend, sometimes alone, sometimes with women. And yesterday? He didn't check in. He just asked if I'd seen the man in this picture. The employee pointed to the picture of Dominic that Elise had shown him. I said I had, and that the man had asked about him. The picture was becoming clearer and clearer. Dominic had come to Pine Heights to find evidence of a connection between his wife and Rayford. Someone had tipped Rayford off, and Rayford had rushed here. Then a meeting on the night trail, a struggle, and Dominic found himself at the bottom of a precipice. Elise called Lucas and explained the situation. Get a search warrant for Rayford's house now, and check to see where he is now. Already working on it, his partner replied. Judge signed the warrant an hour ago. As for Rayford, he's at his restaurant doing some kind of presentation. Oh, that's great. Start the search. I'll be there in 2 hours. By the time Elise returned to LaGrange, the search of Vernon Rayford's lavish mansion was in full swing. The house matched the owner's status, a 3-story building with a swimming pool, tennis court, and wine cellar. Did you find anything? Elise asked when she met Lucas in the hall. A lot, his partner answered as he led her up to the second floor. Let's start with the dressing room. In the huge dressing room where suits were arranged by color, the forensic team examined the navy blue jacket. We found microscopic particles identical to those under Nina's fingernails, Lucas explained. And something else interesting. He took Elise to the office, where on the table was a man's ring with the initials VR on it. There were traces of blood on the inside. It's being analyzed, but I bet it belongs to Nina Brooks. Elise nodded, looking around the room. What's on the computer? Our experts are working on it. The passwords were complicated, but they managed to gain access. They found the emails Nina sent to Rayford. In the last one, she makes it clear she wants to end the relationship. Prints in Nina's apartment? Matched Rayford's prints on several items, including a wine bottle. Elise walked to the window, contemplating the evidence she'd gathered. The case was taking shape, although there wasn't enough direct evidence. Did they check his shoes? Yes, Lucas grinned. We got lucky here. The soles of his hiking boots showed traces of the same soil that had been found where Dominic had fallen. And what's even more interesting, on the cuff of his jacket they found fibers identical to the material of Dominic's jacket. The picture is getting clearer and clearer, Elise nodded, but I need something else to be sure. In the far corner of the office she noticed a safe, already opened by the technicians. Inside were documents, cash, and several jewelry boxes. What's this? She pointed to a small box standing alone. The technician opened it, and Elise saw a pair of diamond earrings. Interesting. Nina's notebook mentioned that she had returned the earrings to Rayford. She examined the jewelry carefully and noticed a faint spot on the clasp of one of the earrings. Get it analyzed. It could be Nina's blood, from the spot behind her ear that Giles had noticed. As the search continued, Elise received a call from the forensic scientist examining the scene of Dominic's fall. Detective, we found paint particles on a rock near where Mr. Brooks was supposedly standing before he fell. The paint matches the color of the ring you found on the suspect. All the pieces were coming together. Elise was ready for the final confrontation. Vernon Rayford was detained in his restaurant during the presentation of a new menu. He didn't resist, but looked surprised and indignant when his license was read to him. In the interrogation room, he sat with a perfectly straight back, remaining unfazed. His lawyer, summoned by telephone, had not yet arrived, but Rayford insisted on starting the conversation. "This is some kind of misunderstanding, detective," he said as Elise sat down across from him. "I don't understand what I'm suspected of." "The murder of two people, Mr. Rayford," Elise replied calmly. "Nina and Dominic Brooks." Rayford laughed, but the laughter sounded strained. "Absurd! You have no proof of anything." "On the contrary." Elise opened the folder and began to lay out the photographs. "Microfibers from your jacket, identical to those found under Nina's fingernails. Your fingerprints in her apartment. Letters telling her to leave her alone." Rayford remained calm, but Elise noticed a muscle twitch in his cheek. "My presence in her apartment is easily explained. We work together. As for the letters, yes, there was a personal relationship between us that ended. That doesn't make me a murderer." "What about this?" Elise put the picture of the ring on the table. "We found Nina's blood on the inside, and traces of paint from it on the stone near where Dominic Brooks fell." Rayford's face remained impenetrable, but his eyes showed a flicker of fear. "I wasn't at that resort. You can't prove otherwise." "We can." Elise showed a screenshot from a surveillance camera. "Your car recorded in the Pine Peaks parking lot at the same time Dominic Brooks was there. Witnesses identified you," she continued, methodically laying out the evidence one by one. "Let me tell you what happened, Mr. Rayford. You dated Nina for several months, gave her expensive gifts, took her on weekend trips to the mountains, but she decided to end the relationship, perhaps out of guilt toward her husband, perhaps because she simply didn't love you." Rayford was silent, but his breathing became more frequent. "You couldn't accept it. For a man in your position, rejection is intolerable. You're used to getting everything you want, and when Nina made it clear that she no longer wanted to see you, you decided that if she wasn't yours, no one would have her." "It's all speculation," Rayford said hoarsely. "You went to her house that evening. You brought her wine, spiked her with sleeping pills. When she passed out, you strangled her. Then you faked a suicide by forging a note." Elise paused, watching the suspect's reaction. His composure was beginning to fray. "But you left out one point. Nina's husband, Dominic, didn't believe in the suicide. He started his own investigation and found evidence of your connection to Nina. When he went to Pine Heights to get confirmation, you found out and followed him." That's not true," Rayford's voice shook. "You met him on the trail, probably just wanted to talk at first, to convince him to stop digging. But the conversation turned into an argument, then a fight, and you pushed him off the cliff." Elise leaned forward, looking straight into Rayford's eyes. 2 people are dead, Mr. Rayford. A young woman who just wanted to live her life, and her husband who was trying to find the truth. They're gone because of your obsession." Something changed in Rayford's face. The mask of equanimity cracked, revealing the storm of emotion beneath. "You don't understand," he whispered. "She was special, the only one. After my wife died, I was alone for so long. And then Nina came along, young, beautiful, smart. I gave her everything, a job, connections, gifts. I was ready to leave her my entire fortune. But she didn't love you," Elise said quietly. "She could have loved you!" shouted Rayford, pounding his fist on the table. "In time! But she chose him, a young, penniless prosecutor. And that's why you killed her?" Rayford lowered his head, struggling with himself. When he looked up again, his eyes were full of tears. "I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't mean to. We had a fight. She said she'd never felt anything but pity for me, that she'd just been using me all this time for work, for contacts." His voice trailed off. "I lost control. I grabbed her by the throat just to shut her up. And then it was too late." And Dominic? He knew. Somehow he knew. On that trail, he directly accused me of killing my wife, said he had proof that he would destroy me. Rayford wiped his tears with his sleeve. "We fought. He was stronger than I thought. At one point, I pushed him away, and he fell." Elise listened silently to the confession. She got what she came for, a full confession to the 2 murders. "Vernon Rayford, you are under arrest for the first-degree murder of Nina Brooks and Dominic Brooks," she said formally. As Rayford was led away, Elise was alone in the interrogation room. She spread the photographs on the table, the smiling faces of Nina and Dominic from their wedding, Rayford's grim face in the police photo. The story was as old as the world, a rejected suitor, an obsession that turned into murder, passion turned to hate, human emotion at its most destructive. Lucas looked into the room. "Good work, Elise," the DA said with a confession like that. "The case is ironclad." "It won't bring them back to life," she replied quietly, gathering up the photos. "But it will bring justice," Lucas countered. "That's a lot." Elise nodded, though she knew in her heart that no punishment would make up for the loss of 2 young lives. All she could do was restore the truth and make sure the killer got what he deserved. As she left the station late at night, she looked up at the starry sky and thought of Nina and Dominique. Somewhere out there, maybe they're finally together and at peace.